Hey everyone. I wanted to make something purely educational about a topic that many people claim to know very well, but I think perhaps only a few actually do. So let me start with a question. What are the Ten Commandments? For something that has been such a centerpiece of news over the past decade with the controversy surrounding the Arkansas monuments, the Oklahoma monument, and the Alabama monuments, it seems to me that everyone ought to know what they are. Now, I'm sure everyone watching this video will be able to list thou shalt not kill, or thou shalt not commit adultery, or thou shalt not steal. You might even remember honor thy father and thy mother, or not to take the Lord's name in vain. But can you remember all 10 and in the correct order? I certainly couldn't without looking them up, so that's what I did. In Exodus 20, they are laid out, and I will be reading directly from the NIV, starting in verse 1. And God spoke all these words, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. And here is where the commandments that we know actually begin. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them, nor worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not commit murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, or his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And that's the end of the list that appeared in every version of the Ten Commandments that were on the monuments that I mentioned before, as well as in every sermon and lecture I ever heard. However, the list doesn't end here. There is a short interlude after this, starting in verse 18, where Moses reassures the terrified Israelites. When the people saw the thunder and lightning, and heard the trumpet, and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance, and said to Moses, Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die. Moses said to the people, Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning. The people remained at a distance, while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. Then God commands Moses to build an altar, and that's how this chapter ends. The next chapter begins by saying, These are the laws you are to set before them, and then goes on for chapters 21 through 23 in listing laws for the Israelites. In chapter 24, verse 3 to 4, it says, When Moses went and told the people all the Lord's words and laws, they responded with one voice. Everything the Lord has said we will do. Moses then wrote down everything the Lord had said. It isn't specific here what Moses wrote or what medium he wrote it on, but the implication is that all of the laws from the previous 4 chapters were written down by Moses. Then Moses takes the book of the covenant, reads it to Israel, and seals it with a sacrifice. In verse 12 of chapter 24, it says, The Lord said to Moses, Come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and commandments I have written for their instruction. Here is the first mention that we have of anything being written in stone. After this, Moses goes up on Mount Sinai where he spends the 40 days and nights. Through chapters 25 to 31, Moses is on the mountain receiving even more laws from God, and they detail all sorts of things from how the Ark of the Covenant should be built, what the temple's dimensions should be, how it should be built, how to induct priests into the priestly order, what kind of clothes they should wear, everything down to the last detail on all of these things. And then at the end of the 31st chapter, in verse 18, it says, "When the Lord finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave him the 2 tablets of the covenant law, the tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God." This means that the first set of tablets included all of the laws that were laid out previously, not just the first 10. But what would you say if I told you that even the first 10 commandments on the list were not the real 10 commandments? Nowhere in the previous passages does the Bible actually refer to them as the 10 commandments. And as you've seen, there were far more than just those 10. Certain translations include headings that mark chapter 20 as the 10 commandments, but these headings didn't exist in the original Hebrew. Neither did chapter or verse numbers. You might remember that while Moses was on the mountain for 40 days, that the people of Israel had Moses' brother Aaron build them a golden calf that they worshipped. And when Moses came down the mountain, he saw this and became angry and smashed the tablets. This is laid out in chapter 32. In chapter 34, verse 1, God calls Moses for the second set. "The Lord said to Moses, 'Chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke.'" And then skipping down to verse 10, "Then the Lord said, 'I am making a covenant with you. Before all your people I will do wonders never before done in any nation in all the world. The people you live among will see how awesome is the work that I, the Lord, will do for you. Obey what I command you today. I will drive out before you the Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Be careful not to make any treaty with those who live in the land where you are going, or they will be a snare among you. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and cut down their Asherah poles.'" And here is where the second set actually begins. "Do not worship any other god, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land, for when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, they will invite you, and you will eat their sacrifices. And when you choose some of their daughters as wives for your sons, and those daughters prostitute themselves to their gods, they will lead your sons to do the same. Do not make any idols. Celebrate the festival of unleavened bread. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, as I commanded you. Do this at the appointed time in the month of Aviv, for in that month you came out of Egypt. The first offspring of every womb belongs to me, including all the firstborn males of your livestock, whether from herd or flock. Redeem the firstborn donkey with a lamb, but if you do not redeem it, break its neck. Redeem all your firstborn sons. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. 6 days shall you labor, but on the 7th day you shall rest, even during the plowing season, and the harvest must you rest. Celebrate the festival of weeks, with the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the festival of ingathering at the turn of the year. 3 times a year all your men are to appear before the sovereign Lord, the God of Israel. I will drive out nations before you and enlarge your territory, and no one will covet your land when you go up 3 times each year before the Lord your God. Do not offer the blood of the sacrifice to me along with anything containing yeast, and do not let any of the sacrifice from the Passover festival remain until morning. Bring the best of the firstfruits of your soil to the house of the Lord your God. And number 10, my personal favorite, do not cook a baby goat in its mother's milk. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write down these words, for in accordance with these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel." Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread or drinking water, and he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. So, here we have the first mention of anything being referred to as the 10 Commandments. Remember that in verse 1 of this same chapter that God said he would write exactly the same thing down in the second set, but most of these are different from the ones everyone knows. Some of them, like the ones about the festivals and the first fruits and firstborn sons, comes from chapter 23, where additional laws were still being set down for Moses. Others are summarized or shortened versions of ones in the first 10. Interestingly, nothing about murder, adultery, theft, lying, or coveting are in the actual 10 Commandments. These are the commandments that the Bible says were put into the Ark of the Covenant. I find it interesting that the set that the Bible actually refers to as the Ten Commandments is so far removed from what most people think they are. People have been putting monuments of the wrong set of commandments in front of government buildings, and some people even claim that the United States was founded on the Ten Commandments, which I have always thought to be false. But now seeing this second set, the actual Ten Commandments, it should be even more clear that the United States was not founded on the Ten Commandments. But what do you make of all this? I've tried my best to present as much of this information as accurately as I could, but it's always the case that there may be something important that I may have missed, or if you didn't like the translation that I was using, you may have some other comments, or I may have taken something out of context. That was not intentional if it did happen. If I have made any mistakes, please do let me know. As always, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to see more, please subscribe. If you have something you would like to see me do a video on in the future, let me know in the comments section. I have also just launched a Patreon, so if you would like to support these videos even more, a link to that and to my Facebook page are in the description. Thanks.